Welcome back. I have a video for you today on business wisdom that we can get from nature and natural objects around us. So I'm going to talk today about the wisdom that we can gain for our businesses from a potato. So what a potato is going to teach you about business, if you look at it in the conventional way, you are going to see a commodity. And when you look at that commodity, you're going to be looking at what is the maximum profit from that. So let's say, for example, you say that actually making it into chips is going to give you the biggest possible return on investment. Everyone likes chips. It's a good, solid, stable, healthy market. So you make some chips, you see it as a commodity. Of course, you are going to need to scale because you're not going to make much of a profit off one potato. So you're going to need a lot of potatoes, which means a lot of land. So you're going to need to scale your business quite significantly. You're going to need people to be eating chips, a lot of chips, in order to keep your business healthy, to keep your bottom line healthy. You are going to need to have a lot of chips on the market to maintain that market stability. And that means you're going to have to create a lot of land to grow your potatoes, creating some vast monocultures in the process. And you are going to have very little flexibility and adaptability in your business. You're going to need people to keep on eating chips. And that's great as long as they are. But the minute that there is some sort of deviation from that, then you have a problem. Your business isn't built for change. So let's take, for example, somebody, there starts to be a bit of a movement towards, well, chips aren't very healthy. And no, they're not. So you end up with this sort of scenario where your entire business is at risk because there's a perception that it's not healthy. So you have to scramble to repackage, rebrand, reimagine the same product in order to double down on your marketing to persuade people to carry on eating chips. So you're going to make a tweak of changing the oil that you use or changing the way that you do them. But ultimately, you can't have people not eating chips because your business is dependent upon that. So that's going to put you in a position where you are going to resist change very heavily. Change in the market is just not going to be an option for you. You can adapt to the current trends in the market, but you are not going to allow the market to shift. And that may get to the point where you're in a place where you put in a lot of lobbying pressure to make sure that the market doesn't shift. So you might be talking to policymakers or whatever, in order to make sure that your business can continue as it is, because it can't change and it can't adapt. And that sounds all very familiar and rather too familiar. And it's exactly where many of our really big businesses have found themselves. So in that scenario, a potato that teaches us nothing about business as such does teach us a lot about how our society is set up. But what can we learn from a potato about our business itself? Well, let's take a different approach to looking at it. Let's not look at it as a commodity. Take a potato and hold it in your hand just for a few minutes and start to consider the weight of it, the feel of it, the shape of it, the form of it, the feel. What does it tell you? Because we have an amazing ability to communicate with anything that we are choosing to give our conscious attention to. So this potato is one of a kind. We may look at it and just see a potato, but it is a one-of-a-kind potato. There's no other potato like this. And if we spend enough time communicating with it, we can come to understand what it can possibly become. Not what can it become within the constraints of what we already know, but what can it become? What can it teach us? Where can it inspire us, and where can it take us? What are we going to create that's never been in place before, because we listen to what could be made with this? And that's a huge difference in terms of how then our markets and our businesses develop, because we don't need to have this unchanging market in place in order to be able to create with it. We need some flexibility and adaptability to respond to what we feel and what the information that comes from that, but we don't actually need to have this consistency, and therefore we can adapt. What I think is really interesting is that when we start to take that approach, and this is the approach that I work on with my mentoring, is that the shift that happens in the values of business in an instant, because instead of seeing a commodity, you are seeing a form of creation. This potato is made of the same stuff as you, but how different are you and the potato? You know, we are made of the same things, but we are expressing things in a different way. So every potato has the ability to become something different to the potato next to it. And the same is absolutely true of your business. Your business is a unique expression. And so it can be something that you work with without those constraints of this is what, will get you the best return. We need to shift out of that. And that's what happens when you sit and you actually consciously connect into the energy and the life force of something in order to be able to understand where it can take you and what can be created with it. So the potato can teach us a huge amount about business if we choose to listen to it. And that in itself shifts the way that we then show up in our businesses, the way that we communicate in our businesses, and how we interact with everything that our business is connected to. It changes the values of that connection. We start to understand the contribution and the connection of all of those pieces that are both within our businesses and outside of our businesses. And so we start to see how we can function in a completely different way, in a more creative way, in a more connected way, in a more collaborative way, and in a, generally speaking, more healthy way. So the potato itself, is obviously a metaphor for the way that we function in business and the options that are available to us to shift the entire dynamic. By choosing to listen to things that are outside of our normal frame of reference, I suppose, the things that we don't necessarily consider to be animate consciousness, then we can take ourselves out of the constraints of the existing patterns that we find ourselves in, which are boxing us into having very limited solutions and creative responses to the challenges that we're facing. And it gives us an opportunity to drop into a completely different set of intelligence, into a completely different set of wisdom that is going to allow us to break out of those patterns, find new ways of doing things, express ourselves in different ways, and work with our businesses to achieve different ends. And this is something that I will be working on now throughout the year on the Rewild Your Business membership, where we will be looking each season at different nature intelligence that can help to inform and guide our businesses into finding that new dynamic, finding a new way of being, and critically changing the overall business dynamic and its relationship to people and planet. So if you'd like to find out more about that, I will make sure that the link is below the video so you can click through and see what the current season is offering and how you can take part. Until next time then, thank you very much. Bye.